If we were to unravel the known history, we could figure that a lot of what has happened we would only be able to recreate from various objects left behind by our ancestors. Today, we take a look at 20 of these objects, or ancient relics, whose discovery has left scientists quite shocked. Number 1. An ancient battery. It would seem that throughout history there were many creative inventors whose genius can leave us in awe, even today. An ancient battery known as the Baghdad battery is a perfect example of this. This astonishing discovery happened in 1936. At first it seemed like a clay jar, whose outside appearance immediately tells the story of how old this object is. However, the mystery of it is hidden within. This object was created thousands of years before we even started developing means to tame electricity. And as we have already mentioned, we discovered that it is a battery. Imagine how amazing it is that ancient civilizations had such powerful relics at their disposal. It means that these civilizations could have been much more advanced than we suppose they were. The clay pot, a copper tube, and an iron rod were put together so well that scientists have debated whether this was a common technological achievement back then, and mystery surrounds the idea of how it could have been used. Interestingly enough, this battery functioned by being filled with fermented juice or vinegar-like substances whose acidity then caused a chemical reaction that scientists believe could create electricity. While we have discovered that when we recreate this device, it indeed can produce electricity, we're still left in the dark regarding how it was used historically. Number 2. Ancient shoe print. The previous relic that we have seen could have literally shocked modern scientists. The next relic we examine has left quite an interesting trail in history. This artifact is known as the Fisher Canyon footprint, and it is made of coal. However, the material of it isn't what's interesting. This relic was discovered in the 1900s and is assessed to be over 15 million years old. Now, as you may imagine, what we know about history doesn't point us towards the idea that back then there were people wearing such a sophisticated form of shoe. Still, it appears to be imprinted in this coal lump, revealing a very complex pattern that could have only been made by the hands of a very skilled person. Number 3. The Voynich manuscript. Much of our knowledge of history comes from the notion that recording what's going on may be useful to future generations. Ancient historians have left us many trails of what occurred in these now inconceivable days. We have already found many sorts of trails that were left on purpose, but there probably aren't any of these as mysterious as the Voynich manuscript. It is often called the most mysterious book in the world, and even its origins are unknown to us. Some analysis shows that it may have emerged in the 15th century. Then again, it isn't the age of this book that surprised the scientists. Instead, its content spreads over 240 pages, and we haven't been able to understand it yet. In this manuscript, there are various diagrams, drawings, and over 25 different symbols that tell us something that we can't grasp. Better put, we don't seem to be able to get what this book is telling us. It holds many secrets, including detailed drawings of plants that resemble some species we are familiar with, but match none. Various rituals we don't understand are also depicted in the manuscript, and all of this has brought forward many speculations regarding the text's origin. Imagine that there were people living so far back in history that their perspective and knowledge was so mysterious that even when they placed their it in a manuscript, we couldn't seem to get to the bottom of it. Number 4. An ancient computer. After seeing these ancient relics that baffle the scientists, we believe you could hardly guess what's coming next. This ancient device, described as a computer, has turned out to be quite a challenge to recreate, even with today's technological knowledge. This is why it is often called the world's first computer. This intriguing relic was discovered in 1902, close to the Greek islands. Because of the location of its discovery, it's named the antikythera mechanism. This device is supposedly so advanced that it was able to predict astronomical positions, eclipses, and ancient Olympic game cycles. These were just some of the events that the device could predict. Now imagine how incredible the creator of the device must have been. It was discovered that it had been made somewhere between 150 and 100 BC. It certainly makes you wonder what else people could have been capable of back then. Number 5. Mysterious stone spheres. Even though the previous relic we examined was quite a complex one, not all of the discoveries that are tough to explain are as sophisticated. In the middle of the jungle, these perfectly round ancient stone spheres were found in Costa Rica in the 1930s. Unfortunately, being quite ignorant at the moment, we proceeded to not even be astonished by this perfect shape that was found all around the jungle, and they were treated just as another boulder standing in the way of business. It took us quite a while before we realized that this was an important discovery that even today sparks a lot of debates and speculations. We still can't seem to understand how these stones came to be so perfectly shaped, who has done this, or even how long they have been around. Due to our initial uncaring treatment of these mysterious stones, many were moved around. But some that remained untouched showed us that they were placed in lines or triangles. Apparently, something or someone wasn't lazy and arranged these stones, among which there are some as heavy as 16 tons. The answer to this mystery is something that we're still looking for. Number 6. Crystal skulls. While the discoveries that we have seen by now were definitely quite intriguing, they may not be as menacing as the following one we bring you. What could be more frightening than an unexplainable ancient set of crystal skulls that have certainly affected the world and even played a part in creating religions? These skulls scattered across the earth have, through time, become associated with mysticism and even alien origins, and they have become an object of admiration for many scientists who explored their mythical features. On the other hand, there are naturally many fake crystal skulls in the world, considering that every other punk fan could have it as an everyday accessory. Well, the skulls, originating in ancient history, were supposedly created using technologies we are clueless about even today. Number 7. Shroud of Turin. The next relic that we examine is quite a religious one, and it is known as the Holy Shroud, which is a linen cloak that has been believed to be the garment in which Jesus Christ was buried. Naturally, since there are those who disbelieve the existence of this religious figure, they don't trust this piece of clothing to be any more valuable or believable than the man himself. But even if we were to leave the question of religiousness aside, what's amazing about the Shroud of Turin is that the methods to print the figure of the man that's believed to be Jesus Christ himself shouldn't have been available in the period when Christ is thought to have been crucified. On the Holy Shroud, there is the image of a man with markings that some believe point out the crucifixion wounds. Number 8. Ancient cubes. While we may feel that a lot of discoveries from the ancient world have already been made, this recent one that happened in 2020 has shown us that this isn't necessarily the case. A fisherman was sifting through a river seeking precious metals, but even though they hadn't struck gold this time, they did stumble upon something quite amazing. After being surprised, they proceeded to dig out 60 very precisely cut cubes that had mysterious symbols and numbers carved on all of their sides. These markings are organized in a grid and aren't much different from the cubes that we use for various modern board games. Besides the cubes, there were also some coins with mysterious engravings. Since the internet is what nowadays connects us all and makes these discoveries easy to share with the world, the man found out quite soon after that these were Hindu cubes used in various rituals, and that the markings on them are, in a mysterious way, connected to the celestial bodies. As a way to make the prayers work better, these are then thrown into rivers, which is how they ended up being found in one. Number 9, Phaistos disk. This next one wasn't as easy to solve, unlike the previous ancient relic. Namely, a scientist who finally managed to crack the code has worked on this for 30 years, and he jokingly calls the puzzle the first instance of CD-ROM. This mysterious-looking disc is made of clay, and we believe it is what remained behind from the Bronze Age. Interestingly enough, it turns out that this clay plate can be read in a spiral direction, moving from outside towards the middle of the plate. While this discovery may not seem as amazing to those who don't care much for ancient linguistics, imagine how complex the symbols and the writing were when it took 6 years before we managed to understand just 3 words from it. As we move on to the next relic of the past, we leave you with these 3 words, which meant pregnant mother, shining mother, or goddess. Number 10. Disco Colgante. Moving from one disc to another, we introduce you to Disco Colgante. This mysterious relic is believed to have been an ancient depiction of our galaxy, which is quite a mysterious thought, considering the disc itself is 2,000 years old. Those who trust this is the explanation behind the mysterious object also pointed out that a special marking is placed where our sun is. If there was a person or a civilization that was able to produce such a powerful depiction of the galaxy 2,000 years ago, what else could they do? Number 11, Terracotta Army. When it comes to mysterious things of the past, we can't miss this archaeological discovery. It has become so popular and well known that it is often one of the first associations with China and represents one of the oldest historical grounds. The soldiers still stand tall for the first emperor of China. The man may have known something that we don't even have knowledge about today, since he decided to prepare for the afterlife and be escorted into it by this huge army. Imagine how unexplainable these statues would be if there were no historians who documented this knowledge, explaining that this fierce ruler wanted to be protected from evil spirits that may trouble him in the afterlife. If you were asking yourself how big of an army one would need, it seems that this ruler thought 6,000 would give him a fair shot at victory. Besides clearly being an amazing effort, these statues were equipped with horses and weapons created with much detail, giving us a chance to see exactly how things were in that historical period. Number 12. Wedge of AIUD. By now, we have already seen cases when ancient relics weren't immediately recognized for what they actually are. The next one we present to you is called Wedge of ARUD, and it is another piece of history whose importance was discovered quite late. While, based on its shape, we can see that it doesn't seem too important or advanced technology, the analysis of its material revealed quite a mysterious thing about it. Namely, the exploration of the object confirmed what we can see just by looking at this relic, and that is its ancient origin. However, the perfection of the aluminum used in crafting this artifact was only discovered in the late 19th century. This leaves an open question of how such an advanced crafting technique could have existed so much before it became widely known. Number 13. Ancient plain figures. In the previous example, we have seen a relic that shouldn't exist in our world based on the quality of its material and its age. It's either that, or we don't have a clear timeline of historical events. Next, we examine multiple relics that became known as the Kumbaya artifacts, which once again send out this worrisome message or conclusion that there could have indeed been highly advanced civilizations present in history that have somehow slipped out of our grasp and knowledge. These golden figures were found in Colombia in the late 20th century. They were apparently made by the Kumbaya civilization and are over 3,000 years old. Now, we can clearly see why this can trigger curious minds to consider what made this ancient civilization create relics of such complexity. Could it be something they have actually seen, which would indicate they knew of technology that could make flight possible? Or could it be that this knowledge was brought from outer space, and that these artifacts were recreations of technology we have never seen before? Number 14, Ancient Ring Watch. If the previously examined relic may give us hints of advanced technology or extraterrestrial life, the next one may add another layer of creepy. What was recently discovered is a relic that is recognized as a Swiss ring watch. It was discovered during excavations in China, and some feel this may be pointing out that time travel is a fact. Although it is modern in design and clearly has a prestigious look to it, it was found in a tomb that is 400 years old. As it naturally happens when such huge ideas are tossed around, there are those who disbelieve that this was a real discovery. But apparently, in 2008, a group consisting of archaeologists and journalists were digging around a tomb dating back to the Ming Dynasty when they stumbled upon an unexplainable and shocking discovery. Number 15, the Moai of Easter Island. In the previous case, we may have seen one of the smallest relics on this list. The following one is quite the opposite. Over 1,000 years ago, on Eastern Islands, also known as Rapa Nui, there was a civilization that chose this place to develop and live. However, this culture had a very specific habit that shocked the first explorers who discovered the island back in 1722. What they found were hundreds of giant stone heads. We can easily see how this would frighten any newcomers. We trust that these giant stones are between 500 and 750 years old, and there are nearly 900 of them on the island in total, since there's no safe way to confirm what these meant to the ancient people. Our best guess is that they could represent ancient leaders or ancestors who were honored in such a way. We also discovered that these giant figures are made from a single piece of stone and carved into interesting shapes. We can see why scientists were astonished when they found that the heaviest of these moai weighs 82 tons. But that's not the only thing that surprised them. After some digging, it was found that these aren't just heads, but the figures also have bodies. Number 16, the Great Head of Guatemala. The island of Rapa Nui isn't the only place in the world known for giant head figures. The Great Head of Guatemala has even clearer human-like features than the previously examined ones. The head seems to be looking at the sky, and it caused a lot of controversy once it was discovered. However, this was another one of those discoveries that, even after it was found, had to wait before the world acknowledged it. Some of the first images of the Great Head of Guatemala were made in 1950, but we have lost sight of its location. Unfortunately, the efforts to recover this giant statue failed, as it was demolished before explorers got to it. The reason for all the controversy was the Caucasian features of the giant head, which points out an idea that some rebel forces may not support. Even though this concrete piece of ancient history was destroyed, other objects from a similar period were found. This is where the mystery arose, since these other sculptures featuring people and animals were also imbued with a magnetic component strategically placed in different parts of the figures. So the question remains, how could these ancient civilizations have been even aware of magnetic properties that were discovered much later? Number 17. The Rus Cup. We have by now seen various amazing things that our ancestors were apparently knowledgeable about and able to do, even though we wouldn't expect them to. The next example we bring you proves once again that concepts that we find to be modern may have existed quite a while back. There are many now famous optical illusions that have made us realize our senses may not always be as trustworthy as we expect them to be. But we may be surprised that even 1600 years ago, Romans picked up on this. This knowledge was used to create an object as simple as a cup that seems to include various bright and beautiful colors and details. However, this is one very old optical illusion. Instead of using actual colors, Romans found ways to use a special type of glass that has weird reflective properties. This is why the cup may change color depending on where we are looking from and where the nearest light source is. If we were to add another layer of mystery to this cup, it seems to be the only one we could ever find. So we may wonder if they already knew how. Why wouldn't they make more of similarly amazing relics? Number 18. The Crocodile Stone. Some of the relics that we have looked into today have had quite mysterious shapes. The next one we will bring you is called the Crocodile Stone, and it has left scientists puzzled regarding its function and its specific looks. As its name suggests, this giant stone has a crocodile shape carved into it, and there have been many theories regarding its use. Some of the darker suggestions point out that this relic could have been used to gather blood from victims who were sacrificed upon this stone. Others trust that it could be just a way to gather water when it's raining. Even though we don't have a definite answer yet, we do know it has been around since the 5th century. Number 19, the London Hammer. This next discovery quite confused scientists once it came to light. It was a hammer that a couple who was walking through London had discovered, hence the name of this relic. The hammer itself is about 6 inches or 15 centimeters long, and it's easy to conclude that it probably wasn't used for big objects. However, it was mysterious because it was stuck in the middle of a rock. Even though it definitely sparked some interest, we later found out that this was a 19th century mining hammer, and the most likely explanation for it being stuck in a rock, ironically, would be that, through time, it got covered by limestone that hardened, leaving us with an almost unexplainable mystery. Number 20. The Plain of Jars. The Plain of Jars is quite a suitable name for how this next discovery looks. It consists of more than 2,000 huge jars made of stone that are hollowed out but still weigh even up to 30 tons. These jars are located in Laos, and the local population was aware of them for a long time, but the rest of the world caught up only in the early 20th century. Since this discovery has stolen the attention of many explorers, they have tried to understand the purpose of these huge relics. What didn't seem to help was that these jars were either empty or filled with quite various items, including smaller pots, weapons, trinkets, and even remains of human bones. Some of them were even marked with carvings that seemed to depict human faces. Similar motifs could be found on circular discs that could be found around, and that are believed to be the lids of the giant jars. Similarly to many other mysteries that we have shown you, this one is still ongoing. Until we reach better conclusions, we can turn to the local legend that says these were cups used for brewing and drinking alcohol by a race of giants that used to inhabit these plains. These have been some of the most amazing ancient relics whose discovery has shocked scientists. We hope you have enjoyed all the mysterious artifacts that we have shown. Thank you for watching.